feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the DaneMoore NBA podcast, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Thursday afternoon. It's December 18th, and I am joined here in the studio by Britt Robson. I was just over at Wolves practice this morning, and they had a practice in between the loss to the Grizzlies on Wednesday night, which I want to talk to you about. But also at practice, there was a lot of the conversation with the players and coaches that we interviewed about the Oklahoma City game. And the hottest line, as I spoiled to you before we hit record, was Naz Reid called it a must-win game. And Doogie followed up. He said, "Did you say must-win?" And he goes, "Yeah, we're absolutely viewing this as a must-win game for us internally. It is a big game. It's this stretch of games, Britt, we've been talking about for pretty much the whole season of like, here come the good teams, here come the test, here comes the opportunity to sort of prove that your record meets the competition." And I do think this team has the ability to turn it up to that level, but we haven't seen much of it. Do you think it's a must-win game?
No, I think it's a silly statement.
Okay.
I mean, what happens if they lose then? Is there a lot of despondence? I mean, are they going to have trouble getting up for the next game? Because that's pretty much their only easy game on the schedule, the next 5. So, no, it's not a must-win game. If they lose, they're 17-11 after 28 games. What does that make it? 54 more games to go after that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just past the one-third mark of the season. Why would this be a must-win game?
I'll make the case.
Okay.
And it's that they need it. That they need to get a rhythm going here, that they need to show to themselves that they can turn it up to that level. I think they all believe that they can turn it up to that level. Naz, I think more than any other player, has been the most vocal about, we need to be more consistent. We need to not have these energy lapses. Right. We need to play the way that we know we can play. And I think playing against Oklahoma City presents that opportunity there to start a roll here. I mean, what must win semantics. I get the.
Would you say there's a 50% chance that they'll win?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a greater likelihood that he's going to bring everybody down by putting a marker on something that probably can't be followed up on. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Sure.
You could say the next 4 games or whatever from now until the end of December is a crucial stretch and a time when we must prove to ourselves that we are as good as we think we are. That would be laying down markers that are realistic markers and at the same time offering the team and yourself a challenge. But to call a team that's 24-2 a must-win game, even though Oklahoma City will be on a rest disadvantage, they play the Clippers tonight, which is not that bad. Obviously, the Clippers are so terrible. But they are the gold standard right now, and it would be an upset. It's not ridiculous. But even if they win, it wasn't a must-win. A must-win means if you don't do this, something dire is going to happen. What dire thing is going to happen if the Wolves lose tomorrow night?
I take your point. I think let's talk about the game. I think I'll say this. If they wouldn't have lost the way that they did last night to Memphis, I think you would have a more optimistic view of this game. Maybe not an over 50% chance that they do beat the Thunder, but I'm sensing some sourness, justified based on what happened last night against Memphis. So maybe go into that.
You mean my sourness?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not. I'm feeling pretty good about the idea that
just didn't like must win as a term.
Yeah, the must win. Well, I mean, it's just silly. It's one of those things that ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. What I like about this is the Wolves are now going to start playing more good teams than bad teams, which means they're going to have to confront challenges that will create adjustments. Those adjustments are extremely hard to make when you don't have to make them because you're winning a fairly consistent amount of time. So I like the schedule. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And I like the fact that a supposedly lesser foe like the Grizzlies proved to them what they have to go through to get where they want to go. The Grizzlies were the exact good team to have this happen because they've won now 9 of 12. They have a tremendous bench. They lead the league in bench points. They outscored the Wolves like 33-5 in bench points in the second half last night. It doesn't matter if their players are hurt. People say no Ja Morant. They're 5-9 with Ja Morant on the court.
Right.
They have always been a grit and grind team. No, they don't have the Zach Randolphs and the Tony Allens anymore, but they have a philosophy and a style of play that mucks it up. They always have. And that is a style of play that can expose a team that isn't used to having the rigor necessary to power through, that has their own set of standards that don't have necessarily anything to do with the opposition, have more to do with what they are doing and how they're doing. And so I think this is a good comeuppance for the Wolves last night. I think that the next 3 of the next 4 games are going to be against OKC, the Knicks, and the Nuggets, who are arguably 3 of the 5 best teams in the NBA.
I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't think more about the Memphis matchup in advance of the game last night. You know, you see 8 Grizzlies players are going to be out, and I go into that, show up at Target Center last night, and in my mind, it's one of those games that the Wolves are playing themselves a bit, as we've seen a lot of those this season, because, you know, they were going to be the superior talent. Right. They were going to, in those matchups, they've had the advantages. And what I'm frustrated about is I didn't see how Jaren Jackson Jr. could neutralize one of the Wolves' main advantages.
Right. The main advantage, if you assume that Ann is out, and that's Randle, obviously.
Which I also didn't know before.
And Randle played right into his hands because it became a mano thing, which was the biggest advantage in terms of offense versus defense. He's the former defensive player of the year. You know, as good as Randle is, that's a tall order. And it just, you know, Randle had 3 assists and like 21 shots against the defensive player of the year. But I agree. I think that Memphis is a sneaky team. I think
and they present some of the things that Oklahoma City does, where they have, in Jaren Jackson Jr., they have a neutralizer.
Right. And they fill the gaps really well.
Yeah.
And they are handsy in terms of both being physical with the bodies of people, but also getting hands on the ball. There was a lot of, you know, what looked like slapstick basketball last night. That's Grizzlies basketball. That's basically, we'll turn you over. We'll keep up the pace because we don't want to play your half-court defense. We'll turn some over in the process. But I just thought it was a good – the good part of this, of course, for the Memphis thing is that what I just said, they are now in a – I'd say for the next month and a half anyway, there's a week or two, you know, in that where they play a softer schedule. But I think in general, things get a lot tougher now. And so that's a good thing. The bad thing is youth core disappeared. You had the worst of both worlds. You had the thinking is if you play your young guys, you're going to lose as they develop. Well, in this case, Finch pulled the plug way before they could develop, and they lost the game for them. I mean, that 14-0 run with Shannon and Dillingham in the game in the, you know, mid to late third quarter was the key to the game. And it was very obvious that those two were a critical mass of dysfunction that affected the rest of the team. Not that the other 3 guys on the court were great either, but it's just hard. I mean, it's a realization that that's this youth core issue is moving to the forefront, perhaps in tandem or maybe ahead of the point guard issue, which I know that it's intertwined. But I think those two things are things that are going to have to be addressed against tougher competition. And now the good news is they're going to have to address them.
Right. You and I haven't done an episode kind of since Finch said his comments about what if the role is only 10 minutes
exactly
for these guys. And I mean, last night was kind of a perfect example of that, where you talk about the 14-0 run that Memphis went on with TJ and Rob on the floor. It was in that second shift.
That's true.
That Finch is giving TJ and Rob.
That proved Finch's point.
Yeah, in that game.
I'm going to push back a little, though. I mean, everybody knows I'm a Chris Finch stan, but in this particular instance, when he said that, I think it is unreasonable. Go out there and have a great 10 minutes or you sit the rest of the game isn't really what you want to tell your 20-year-old point guard. You know, not to mention a guy who's already shit the bed twice and is worried that the next time may get him permanently on the end of the bench in Shannon. And the lack of minutes for Jalen Clark is sort of mystifying for me. So I thought about this earlier today, and I think it is somewhat of an indictment on Finch. What does he say about how he runs the offense? What he says is, I let the players go out there and show me what they do best, and then I organize the offense around them. So by definition, the Wolves are running an offense that other players have dictated that these guys are going to have to now run stone cold, not having their strengths and weaknesses as an advantage in that offense. So I just think that's unfair.
Yeah. I mean, and my pushback on it is I just think it is dismissive of the idea of rhythm and confidence.
Right.
I get why Finch is doing it. It is unlikely that Shannon or Dillingham will give them production in a larger role. But it dismisses the idea that in the larger role, there will be greater confidence and greater rhythm from those players.
My defense of Finch here, to go on the other side of this, is his job is to win a ring. He's been to the conference finals twice. And while it is a good idea to develop people, if he doesn't think he can win games, if he does that, then that's a conversation I imagine he's having frequently with Tim Connelly. And I don't know what the results of that discussion are, but they're 17-9 now, 17-10. And that is Finch's rebuttal. Finch's rebuttal is, I'm trying to win games here and give them meaningful minutes, is his line there. And then the other thing I think is that his instincts have been really good about people who, I mean, he plucked Nah out of, he's the one that argued for Nickeil Alexander-Walker to be included in that trade. And he is the one that dissuaded Nah to think the way Nah was thinking. Think this way about yourself. And Nah went with that and became a much better player. Now, Mike Conley obviously helped in that process too. But Finch did a brilliant job with Nah. He's done a really good job developing Ant, developing McDaniels, obviously developing Randle to the extent that Randle has kind of remade his game from when he was in New York. He's got a good track record. The flip side of that is when he doesn't mesh with somebody, it feels like curtains.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough when you've got the heir apparent at the point and the guy you're counting on to be a 7th or 8th man this year as two of those figures. That creates real problems.
Yeah, I do think there's a difference between Rob Dillingham and Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Absolutely.
In terms of Nickeil was at a more vulnerable place to maybe be able to accept the idea that the player that he had been,
like Bones Harlan.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that, I mean, Bones wasn't great last night, but largely Bones has been good in, a pleasant surprise in the way that Nickeil similarly was after the trade deadline, after that first season. But I think with Rob, he's not he hasn't dropped down to that level. You know, he's come
Right.
in and been a lottery pick and all of those things, and is feeling that he hasn't gotten the opportunity and not really understanding it. We talked to him at practice today some too. And I think what is, by applying kind of the same thought process on Rob as he did with Nikhil and or Bones, the result of that for Rob is he's feeling pressure when he's playing out there. And what I think we're seeing with Rob is when he's feeling pressure, he's a more hesitant player. He's a player who does lack confidence and rhythm. And Rob said that today. He said, feeling pressure out there. Jace asked him, you know, what is it for you? What do you need to do out there so it is a good shift when you're out there? And Rob listed off like 6 or 7 things. And I think that's what Rob is going into every one of those.
Script, right?
Yeah, and it isn't a 10-minute role either. It's about 5.
Right.
And in those 5 minutes, it's hard to check every single one of those boxes.
Right.
And I think like last night, for example, one of his first possessions, he had that bad turnover on the baseline. So now the script already, the first box is red, you know, and I wonder as a 20-year-old how you kind of manage that. I think to Rob's credit, again, in that first shift last night, he did kind of rectify himself some, had a couple of nice plays in that second quarter there. But he's feeling pressure. He said that, you know, today as well. And I think that's just confirmation of what we're all been seeing.
Well, there is definitely a certain type of player that needs constant encouragement, especially if they're young and are facing significant adversity for the first time in their lives. They need encouragement. Ryan Saunders used to be that guy on the Wolves staff. I don't know who that guy is. I don't know who. Do you know who's assigned to Rob?
He's with C. Hines.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because I think C. Hines has got a pretty upbeat, feel to it. I have suspected increasingly as this season has gone on that, Rob and Finch are just not a good match because of, what Finch is like and you know what Rob is like. And Rob's belief in himself is not the belief that I can become a multifaceted guy. It is a belief that if you put me out there and let me do what I do, I can be helpful. There is a difference between those two things. What Finch wants him to do is hone his weaknesses at the expense of his strengths right now. And what Rob wants to do is give me a break, give me a chance to get some strengths under my belt so then I can attack my weaknesses. Don't ask me to be a playmaker when I'm off in a bucket. One area, and I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago in a column or last week or whatever, they agree on defense and they agree on just busting your ass on defense and the rest will take care of itself. Finch very rarely complains about Rob's defense because there's not a lot to complain about. I mean, he's going to be hurt in different matchups simply because of his size. The same way a big out on a jitterbug point guard is going to get hurt. It's just certain situations on the basketball court don't do you any favors. But he's dug in. He's been hard-nosed, as hard-nosed as 170 pounds can be. And so Finch respects that. And that is the one area that seems to me to be the saving grace in that relationship.
And a little bit of a credit to Rob too. He
Absolutely.
He came in not having ever been really asked to do any of that stuff. He's told us about that.
And the other thing is, what doesn't require a lot of thought? Digging in on defense, just getting after your man.
That's a good point.
So he doesn't have a lot on his mental plate when it comes to that. Yeah, rotations and that kind of stuff. But it's too bad. I don't know how the thing gets resolved. When Ant comes back, I suspect Rob is on the bench. I think that Bones gets the Rob minutes and Rob gets the bench minutes. And so that'll be an interesting situation. I do think the way things now stand, the Wolves will be better, obviously, having Ant back and having Bones now as somebody who can be a generator. They've always needed pace and playmaking off the bench. Conley gives you one, not the other. Rob gives you one, not the other. And Bones is kind of a hybrid there. So I think that's the best fit going forward. But it's one of the issues.
Let's talk about Ant's return, but we'll grab our first break here really quick to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And Britt, I've been letting people know that it would be nice to go out on New Year's Eve and be able to come home at 10 p.m. and our friends over at Falling Knife, who
That's
you know
the way
well.
I do it.
Yeah, right. So what they do is this New Year's early party where the party starts at 6 o'clock. They do like the ball drop and the confetti at 8 p.m. and then at 10 o'clock it's over. So you get a cheaper Uber home,
Right.
You're home at a more reasonable hour. Yeah, they've been doing it for a handful of years and it's fun. It is a ticketed event. For listeners, it's $90 for tickets, but included in the $90 is all you can drink Falling Knife beer and all you can eat food from Rectangle Pizza. It's not just pizza. There's going to be, it's an elevated menu is the way they put it to me. There's going to be additional things there as well. So if you are, it's whatever, we're 2 weeks away from New Year's Eve and you're thinking about what it is you might want to be doing, I would recommend, looking into this or talking with friends about potentially going over to Falling Knife. If this is, I don't know, maybe if you're more like my age and don't want to be out at a packed bar or something for New Year's Eve, Falling Knife will be a more fun and age appropriate and time appropriate option there. So there's a link to buy tickets for that in the show notes here, or you can go to the Falling Knife website, or as I always say, if you the best way to kind of follow what's going on at Falling Knife is to look at their Instagram page is very updated and you can find links there as well. Falling Knife Brewing Company is in Northeast Minneapolis.
And on the other hand, if you are a party animal, you
go out afterwards.
can engage in the entire Falling Knife experience and then go hit some other place.
Well, you can make a whole day out of it. I think the Wolves play at 2 p.m. that day. You can watch the whole Wolves game. That's 2 to 5. And then at 6 o'clock, you can go over there and then you could stay there and you can go out afterwards. Yeah, that'd be a marathon.
Weave your way to the next event.
The show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, as you all know. And what I've been saying is if you've been knocked out of your fantasy football league, as I have, Prize Picks is a way to keep playing fantasy football on Sundays and Thursdays and Mondays and whatever throughout the regular season. And I think there's even games on Saturday this week. Tonight, the Rams play the Seahawks. And to play, all you need to do is pick more or less on at least two player stats in the game. The two I highlighted were Puka Nacua, more or less than 91.5 receiving yards. No Devontae Adams in that game. Does that mean Nacua gets more usage in this one or less because he gets more attention? You can pick either side of that. Jackson Smith and Jigba, more or less than 89.5 receiving yards. I said this last night, but JSN has 90 or more receiving yards in 9 of the last 10 games. So if you like that trend to continue, you can take more than on 89.5 receiving yards. Whatever it is you want to do to play fantasy football, you can do it over with some daily fantasy at Prize Picks. And you all know the drill. Promo code Dane, if you haven't yet signed up, that'll just get you $50 in lineups when you play your first, $50 in free lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks.com, PrizePicks app, promo code Dane when you create that account. So to the Ant return piece, it's been 3 games that he's been out. We were talking about this a little bit at the game last night.
Right.
The Golden State game being one of the Wolves'
Great game.
best games
Right.
of the season. What do you think they can take from this little bubble of time without Ant that they can apply to his return, or what can Ant even himself apply here?
I actually think it might be more Ant than the team, because Ant will have the bigger impact. I don't think that the team is going to shut Ant out of what he wants to do versus Ant shutting the team out of what they may be doing best without him. It's kind of the same thing. I think that the assists and shot attempts have been remarkably balanced among the people who've been on the floor, which means that this team can share the ball. They don't necessarily hog the ball now. The second half last night, a lot because the threes weren't falling, but they didn't play as well as, obviously, Golden State, I thought, was a real high point for the season. But, the other wins they've had, they're 4-3 without Ant. And I think in general, They can play offense. What Ant needs to do is take a good offense and make it a great offense rather than be a very good offense and then expect the rest of them to make it great. He is the one that's capable of getting his own and fostering that type of synergy that they have developed a fair bit amount of the time that he's been out. And some of that is just stuff you and I have been preaching forever. You know, you can get off the ball, move without the ball, and get the ball in a more advantageous place. That kind of pattern has been developing. It wasn't last night because Randle got ball hoggy with Jackson on him. But in general, the first half, I think it worked pretty well, even with that, with Randle missing. But I do think I'm a ball sharing acolyte, and I think that to the extent they have two ISO dominant players, and a lot of good ball sharing offensive players, I think Jaden McDaniels has become an eye-opening ball sharing player, and has made Rudy Gobert is going to miss the fact that Jaden isn't going to have the ball in his hands as much with Ant coming back.
Well, maybe that's something that can sustain. You know,
it would be great. I mean, I know how much Ant loves Jaden, but Ant's confidence in himself is such that he truly does believe that if he does what he does, everything will fall into place. And I know that's a push and pull with the coaching staff and, you know, with his teammates for that matter. I mean, but I do think that if Ant can be, I think it would make him a more efficient scorer. One of the knocks on Ant has always been, and he's definitely improved that from year to year, but he's still not an ultra efficient scorer. He's still a volume scorer more than a efficient scorer. I think he can be both, you know, and all the caveats. He's 24 years old, you know, and
the ceiling is tied to that, though. So
yeah,
that's the good to great piece of it, I think.
Yeah, no, I you know, and on defense, I think Ant is missed. You know, because he does have a, you know, a starring role on the team. He often takes, if not the best wing, a good wing. He's not being, you know, shuttled onto somebody, and he's paying a little bit more attention. I think they miss him there. And I also think that the team's rotation will get better.
Yeah.
And so having Bones come off the bench, I think, will be an improvement as long as Bones doesn't do a lot of chucking from deep the way he did in the second half.
That feels like a good fit, right? Like a 14 minutes a night type of role for Bones. Like, I don't think that feels good. Like, I feel good about that.
I do too. Provided, again, Finch sees him in practice every day. So I don't know if Finch was trying to speak something into existence or whether he really believes that Bones Highland is a pass first point guard. I mean, anybody who watched him play his first two seasons when he played a lot would not say that.
Yeah.
You know, he's a bucket, and Tim Connolly loves that kind of player. It's why he drafted Dillingham. I mean, he's not into guys who pass the ball a lot. He's into guys who can get a bucket.
And pass off of it.
Yeah, like, no, I get it. But I mean, what you'd call hoopers, guys who play playground ball. Sure. And Bones feels like a play. Well, I just noticed when I rewatched last night's game on the TV today, the part of the pregame was that Bones was talking about this high school or a playground guy, Hot Sauce.
Yeah. And like you don't know Hot Sauce?
Didn't know anything about
it. Oh yeah, man. That's and one mixtapes back in the He said, wasn't it I didn't watch it, but somebody else told me about it, that he said that was his favorite player or who he models his game after.
Role model.
Yeah, role model. Yeah. Yes. No, Hot Sauce was very cool in that context, but it's not the type of player that you would copy paste into the NBA.
You know, it's not a pass first point guard.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
And if it is, it's because he wants everybody to say, "Oh, look at that pass," rather than, "Hey, nice dime."
Right. I do think the Golden State game happening and the Memphis game both happening while Ant was out, like, was a good juxtaposition
Yes.
of the reminder. You know, some people are getting a little high on the, like, look at the Wolves without Ant. This is what it looks like with ball movement. The Golden State game was great. And then they clearly desperately missed Anthony Edwards in that game against the Grizzlies last night. Like,
the dismissal of Conley, which, look, I have very, very reluctantly come to the point that Mike Conley deserves to be downgraded in terms of what he can do for the team this year. But he's not useless. And there are certain instances, like the second half last night, he could have really come in handy 2 or 3 times when the Wolves got up 5 or 6 points and then immediately gave it back. That was Mike Conley time.
Yeah, that 14-0 run was all 3 of the bigs out there plus Shannon and Dillingham.
Right.
And if Mike Conley was active and playing in that game, he's one of the guys out there. Yeah, that's.
And so, you know, not that, like I said, I concede that, you know, I have enormous respect and affection for Mike Conley. He's a reporter's dream in terms of educating us about the game and being really honest at the same time.
But more importantly, has previously been a good player.
Absolutely.
for this
Well,
team
that
in
too.
this season.
But what I'm saying is he's somebody that I'm always going to give the benefit of the doubt to, because I think he is incredibly resourceful, and I think he still has value. But I have come to the conclusion his value is not as great as I thought it was, even 3 weeks into the season. So, you know,
part of it's changed too. Is like, at least at the beginning of the season, he was 38, but he was making his threes.
Yeah. Well, and he's still, I mean, he's not bad at threes right now.
No, I mean, I know Mike Conley is a good shooter. That's not something that goes away.
But twos, he's not. You know,
It's been terrible at twos.
He's been terrible at twos, and he isn't.
I'm just
he
saying,
isn't ahead of the play a lot. His
Mm-hmm.
brain used to be able to send his body ahead of the play.
Yes.
And I don't think his brain can send his body ahead of the play now because his body just isn't there. The brain obviously still is. His anticipation saved him, made him, gave him his, 10 to 15 year seasons. Those were done on court IQ as well as athleticism.
A theme that has developed in the non-Ant time, again, just 3 games, and related to Bones, is this is as good as the pace has been all year, and in like a healthy sort of way. What have you seen the value of that to be, and how important do you see that to?
Well, when I asked Finch about that before the game yesterday, I thought he gave a really good answer, which is that I asked, your pace is up and you seem to be successful. What are the advantages of a high pace for you guys? Because your roster obviously has 2 ISO guys who are not pace friendly necessarily. And he said, it's getting the secondary guys out there and getting them touches and points. And he specifically shouted out Dante and Naz. I thought that was a great answer because I think both of those guys have the green light to pull up for threes in transition, which used to be like a ridiculous thing to do. And analytics has proven that it's not a bad thing to do at all. It's a lot easier to do when Ant's not on the floor because you've got a superstar next to you and you're coming down a transition and launching. But I also think that Naz more than Dante in terms of pure pace. Ever since the Iowa Ants, I keep coming back to that McLaughlin combo. Those guys, that was what opened people's eyes about Naz, is when he got on the floor as a 6'9" guy. Even when he was a roly-poly guy, he was up and down the court looking like, there was joy in his play.
There was pace to get into the other side of the floor, and there was pace within the half court. And I think that's the real dream of pace, right? It's not just like how many fast break points do we get? Right. It's hopefully like sneaking in ahead of the defense before it gets set in those semi-transition spots. But even if not, here we are, we're immediately now into our half court, and maybe the defense is cross-matched,
Right.
or there's some of
exactly.
those things. And there's been that you're referencing that time with McLaughlin and Naz out there years ago. There's been pockets of time or lineups that have done that
Right.
for this. Well, I would even say the Naz, Dante, Nikhil group that played so much together last year were committed to that. And that's, yeah, I just think it's Bones Highland. I think inspired some of that in these recent 3 games, and it's a hopeful thing to sustain.
And Dante gets jazzed up by it.
Sure.
I mean, he starts to get into one of those little jags where he's disrupting the other team's offense in the backcourt and getting offensive rebounds that are really tough offensive rebounds. He's doing the Jalen Clark dance. And maybe not absolutely as well as Jalen Clark, but what he does on the court otherwise is so much better than what Jalen Clark can do in those other kinds of things, that to have, you get that presence, you get that interrupter, that chaos generator. And so having Naz and Dante on the floor going up and down like that is great. And then Julius, when he does the freight train drive, he gets in the spirit of it. And the only one who really is left out, and not always, is Rudy. Rudy likes to run the floor. The problem is you never know night to night whether or not that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's just naturally harder for him, given
sure.
a limit of skill set, not even necessarily speed. Like he runs.
And I do think, I mean, I'm on this kick right now because I did write about McDaniels in my last column. I did a lot of, film watching, or whatever you want to call it, on just the way Jaden and Rudy interact. It isn't ever going to be high pace, but they do well in like medium transition.
Great.
Like when, just what you said, nobody's really clear on matchups yet. And they come down. And I think that they share this whole, their defenders first, so they get kind of ignored on offense. So I think that they have that kinship, and they kind of look for each other, especially Jaden looking for Rudy. And, I think Jaden had 2 or 3 dimes to Rudy last night among his 4 in the first half. By the way, before we go too much further, one of Rudy Gobert's best games last night. It was a really good game. When I rewatched it today.
Stretch, yeah.
Yeah, really good.
It came up, Chris and I were talking last night about Julius not having the matchup, no Ant, and so you go, all right, well, you needed more from elsewhere. And what I said, or was thinking in the moment, probably talking to you about sitting in the media section, was, okay, this would be a good opportunity for it to be a Bones game, or Rob to really step up, because they need another initiator, another creator, another place to create an advantage. And, the reality of the situation with Bones and Rob is it's not just a button you can press and you're going to get that.
Especially against a Grizzlies team that has a lot of interchangeable, hardworking parts.
Yeah, and difficult perimeter defenders as well. But as I was thinking about it more, it's like, man, it would have been great if Jaden's number could have been called more last night specifically.
He had like 2 shots in the first half or something ridiculous.
Yeah, and so much of Jaden's, scoring uptick this season has been in those semi-transition situations where he's been elite, and also he's been the beneficiary of when Ant or Julius have an advantage. Second guy comes, and then it gets shifted over to Jaden, and he's able to attack against a shifted defense, or just have a clean cut to the basket. But I think this is the next curiosity with Jaden of another level is, can you just call his number and play through him a little bit more directly, rather than in a broken situation like transition, or as a secondary cog, as he mostly is when this team has been at full strength, and he's having his best offensive season.
Right.
But I'm wondering what we want to call Jaden's number more. What does that look like? Because I don't think he's exactly like let's just run a high pick and roll for him type of guy. And he's not really used as a screener that often. Like, what is...
I think that is a fantastic topic. Because I think, is there a more unpredictable player on the floor with the ball in his hands than Jaden McDaniels? Do you know what's going to happen?
No.
I mean, is he going to pull up? Is he going to drive into traffic and do the rocking chair? Is he going to try to bust through the thicket and do an up and under? Is he going to zip it out to the corner for a kick out?
A little slow step.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, or is he going to do like one of those runs and then stop and let everybody fly by him? And I also think that there's a little playground in his game and that he doesn't necessarily know either. And he basically just reacts and figures it out. But I think running a play with Jaden involved, I think he would really take to that.
Like, paint me the picture. That's the thing. It's like, I agree. I think he'd really take to it. I think it'd be a good thing. But what's the what is the action? You're not going to run like a pin down for him to come up as a shooter.
I think what happens is if this could happen, I would run pick and rolls for him on both sides of the pick and roll, both designed to get him to the basket.
Mm-hmm.
And once his facility and getting to the basket was established, work in the weak side lob to Rudy and the kickouts to Ant wide open.
So kind of like the empty corner pick and roll that Mike and Rudy used to run all the time.
Right.
A side pick and roll rather than a high quad.
Yeah, absolutely. Although there was one, yes, when I think that Jaden on the roll would also be pretty good.
Yeah.
He's not a great screener, but you don't necessarily have to be,
right.
You know. It would depend on the personnel, obviously, but I think Jaden has got enough in his bag. You could even start. He started to do the old Andrew Wiggins stop behind the guy screening. Conley obviously does it too. Catch the screen off the three and hit that.
Yeah.
Now, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's a small sample size. He's still over 40%, but he's been cold lately from there. So
my answer would be, I think to get Jaden more directly involved would require matchup hunting a little bit more. And that's something in hindsight, I think they would have benefited from.
Bigs or smalls?
Well, I just think last night, specifically to that game against Memphis, I think the Wolves could have done more to get Jaren Jackson Jr. off of Julius Randle.
Right.
So I'm just saying, I think Jaden could be that just kind of sacrificial screener that just forces them to switch that action.
Right.
And now Jaren Jackson Jr., if he comes and sets it for Julius Randle and forces that switch, now Jaren Jackson Jr. is on Jaden there, and who is guarding Jaden? That's like Coward or something. And now Julius is there, and now Julius is again back in an advantage situation. I think that they could have done more of that, not even Jaden specific, just like in general.
Right.
I think that would have made sense in that matchup. And I think it will make sense in other matchups when they're playing against higher level defenses.
Right.
But also what will happen in that is it's not just that Julius now has the advantage. The defense is broken, and now Jaden has a better matchup for himself. Maybe it's not Jaren Jackson Jr., but they've shifted around, and now Jaden can get into isolation against the shifted defense. I just think what they did last night of just hammering the same nail over and over again, like use a new tool.
Especially since it was a bad hammer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Also I do think that they didn't involve Landale enough, or Landale as a defender. He's not fast.
Yeah,
and Triple J covered for him quite a bit. Well, you could move Triple J out of the paint, and Randall can do that,
right?
And then work with Rudy and Jaden on exposing Landale.
Yeah,
but Finch admitted all this. He said, "I should have called more plays." And
it was an example of a game pretty unambiguously that they needed more structure, needed more direction, because the natural positives that come from flow were not presenting themselves. Right. And instead, Julius is running into a wall and not drawing the second defender. So it's just a kick to Dante or Naz or somebody who's guarded.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why I think they shot so poorly from three, especially in the second half.
What's disappointing to me is like the attitude. Well, it worked really well in the first half.
Yeah.
So therefore, let's ride it deep into the second half and find out for sure it's not going to work. It is my complaint I know I'm a broken record on this, with the soft schedule, I think that you could just wait and see on the status quo, and more often than not,
Yeah, right.
you're right.
It's fine.
You know?
Yeah, the status quo is fine.
know?
But what if it isn't?
What if it isn't? And not only that, how much time can you afford to wait before you realize it isn't? Quite a long time if you're playing cupcakes. If you're playing a good team and you wait too long and say, wait a minute, this isn't working, we need to adjust. Too late.
Yeah.
And so again, that is why it's good that we're going to see some really good teams, and we're going to see what this Wolves team can do with that kind of, opposition. Hopefully we're going to see it with Ant back, because otherwise, the longer Ant stays out now, and Conley for that matter, but obviously much more Ant, the harder it's going to be, because you've got built-in excuses, and you don't want that.
Yeah. And
you don't want to be able to say, yeah, we just went through a rough stretch. We're still 18-13,
Yeah.
You want to say, all right, we've got everybody, no injuries. Here's what's happening. We still lost 4 or 5.
I know there's a lot of the season left, so I don't want to over-exaggerate this, but it does feel kind of critical from the sense of, if it is a bad run here and they go 1-4 or whatever over the next 5, you no longer have the 17-9 thing, and we're on a 54-win pace to sort of fall back on,
Right.
and then it tightens,
But tightening, that is why
I'm saying it tightens.
they need to know. And so one of the ways it's good to know in December or January by then probably, but it will be, they have a lot of time to figure it out. They've got a trading deadline to make adjustments if they have to. And it is a long season, and Finch and the Wolves have always been really good at this. I do think that it is a hinge time. I think it is a time where they pivot into elevation and prove to themselves they are as good as they thought they were, or close to it, and only need small adjustments. Or they realize that they can't continue to skate with a thin bench and no real solutions in playmaking beside the 2 heavy ISO guys. Then you've got fundamental issues.
Well, let's get a little bit more specific about those adjustments, whether it's to style of play or trade. I think the Kobe White thing was a good example of this. Jason and I talked about it on Monday a little bit. Of Kobe, I know you like Kobe White too.
I do like him.
Which made it interesting for me when I sort of played out that string in my mind of what this would look like. I went into it wanting to be excited about Kobe White. I was like, oh, this would help here. This would help. This would help there. But then I kind of fell back on this idea of, can this team give a substantial role and trade substantial pieces for an all offense, no defense type of player?
Right.
I can like Kobe White and also feel like that might not be a good adjustment in a vacuum,
right?
For this team. So what I'm kind of struggling with is, what would the right adjustment be, maybe in terms of personnel specifically, because I do think it's kind of a delicate balance.
I do think you have to lean into offense.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I do. I mean, I just think that I think this team is fundamentally a better offensive team than it is a defensive team.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Memphis has a guy in their roster, Scottie Pippen Jr., John Krasinski, when he and I were talking about 3 weeks ago about who should the Wolves get, and people are talking bigger names. I said, I don't want a big name. I just want a grinder that's coming off the bench right now that can also be a playmaker and is better than people think. And when he said Scottie Pippen Jr., that was exactly the kind of player I had in mind.
Sure.
Now, though, Memphis isn't going to give him up, I don't think, for, and he's making less than Bones is making right now, which is ridiculous, over the next 3 years. So he's a valuable
minimum contract. Yeah, the minimum contract.
Valuable salary commodity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And so what you usually have to give up under those circumstances is picks. Yeah. Well, obviously the Wolves don't have a lot of those. So then it becomes an uneven switch of personnel. on the side. So what are you willing to give up for a Scottie Pippen Jr. or whatever? All these, my point is, I can go a number of different ways. Scottie Pippen Jr., I think, helps you on both ends of the court. That's what I would prefer. He probably helps you a little bit more on defense, but he's a good fit. What I'd want more than anything, if they change personnel, is a good fit. It just so happens that Kyle Anderson and Nickeil Alexander-Walker were great fits.
Right.
Mike Conley, when he came over, was a great fit. I think Tim Connelly has a pretty good sense of what works.
Sure.
And so I think those, if the rumors were true and Tim Connelly was the source of why those rumors happened rather than the Bulls trying to inflate the value of Kobe White, then I think that's a positive sign of that the Wolves think that they can do more with Kobe White than on defense than what he has shown.
Today's show is brought to you by Skims. Skims obviously has an expansive lineup in the women's clothing space, but they've really expanded their product to the men's side of things, specifically men's underwear. And I've said this before, but my favorite thing about Skims is that it is a type of boxer brief that both works for going to the gym and also just works for everyday life. I have the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and they work functionally just kind of like compression shorts I would wear back in the day when I played basketball, or for when I go on runs. But these ones are significantly more comfortable. I think that's what's unique about them is they can be you could wear one pair to the gym and you can wear another pair after the gym because they are built for both. Like I said, the 5-inch stretch boxer briefs are my personal favorite, but they also have cotton briefs amongst other styles. I think you should try and find a pair that works for you. Be more comfortable. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com and Skims stores and let them know we sent you. After you place your order, you can select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you are looking for the perfect gift this season, the Skims holiday shop is now open at skims.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Storyworth Memoirs, and we're excited to have Storyworth back as a holiday season gift option for your parents or your loved ones. I think if you're around my age, this is a great gift to give to your parents. The idea behind Storyworth is uncovering stories you didn't know about your loved one. This is how it works. Each week, Storyworth emails a loved one a memory-provoking question that you get to choose. What were your favorite toys as a child? What's something you're most proud of? And all your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story. After a year, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book. Photos are printed in color in the book, and it will be a treasure your loved one and you will be able to share and revisit for generations. Customers love Storyworth. They've printed over 1 million books and have preserved 35 million family stories since their founding 13 years ago. They also have 48,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. I use Storyworth, and I think you should too. Give your loved ones a unique keepsake you'll all cherish for years. Storyworth Memoirs. Right now, save $10 or more during their holiday sale when you go to storyworth.com/DaneMoore. That's storyworth.com/DaneMoore to save $10 or more on your order. What is the word that Finch uses that is his highest compliment?
Fearless.
I remember being at a game in Chicago, and fearless was a word he used with Kobe White. He uses it sparingly.
Right.
He uses it sparingly.
He's begun to. He used to use it a lot, and then he realized, I think, that he was cheapening it. Right.
Yeah. I do think Finch would like him, and maybe I'm exaggerating the all offense, defense piece of it, but
I think this team can be a top 3 offense.
Sure.
But that does get back to what I just said about Ant. I think that if Ant and Julius understand their value, first of all, if the pace can rise, and if Naz and Dante can be explosive at various times and be given the room to be explosive,
sure,
and that Rudy, on the nights he's hotter, has a mismatch, is given the 20 points that the defense is willing to give you on that, I think this can be a really good offense, even without with a Bones as your backup point guard.
So my stand, I don't disagree with that. I think they could become a really good offense without a change.
Well, that's kind of what I just said.
Yeah, okay. I guess I say that to mean I think there's meat on
you
the
mean without
bone.
a change in the style? See, I think they need to change.
Maybe I changed this out. Sorry, I meant a trade.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I think if Bones is your backup, provided that he doesn't get too shot happy.
Yeah.
And Mike, you get Mike for the calm down minutes that you
Mhm.
need. Like a very rich man's Joe Ingles in terms of having a very specific role that you
Mhm.
plug him into at that particular time.
I think for me, the biggest thing is Ant and Julius in tandem being the sum of their parts when they're both out there together. And that has not been the case thus far. But I think it makes sense that they could find more of that over the final 55 games or whatever of the.
I think that's on the
season.
coach.
Sure.
I really think that, and Tim Connolly always says that Chris Finch is an offensive genius. I happen to think that Chris Finch's strengths are not offense or defense. I think it's guiding a team and keeping a locker room happy and getting the most out of the players, for the most, growing a team. But stylistically, he needs to figure out his relationship with Julius is obviously superb. And I would assume the thing about Ant is Ant loves everybody. Now, Ant always goes to bat for Finch, and I do think they have a great relationship. But one of the reasons they have a great relationship is that Finch is extremely respectful of what he asks of Ant. It's always said that Finch coaches Ant hard. In terms of what their shared goals are, yes. In terms of going outside of Ant's comfort zone, I'm not sure that is true. So can Ant and Julius work on something where they're diming each other as much as everybody else, or they are running plays that really are sacrificing a player for the benefit of that other player and riding that while it continues to be the most successful move? The great teams that have had 2 really good scorers or 3 really good scorers, I can't think of it right. I mean, Jabbar and Magic and, Bird and McHale and I'm sure there are teams that have not 40 years old that other people can think of. But
Shaq and Kobe.
There you go. But what makes them great, and some of that is, of course, the surrounding personnel, but some of it is also how they make room in their own game.
Yes.
For the advantages in the other.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Because there is room.
I agree.
And I think last night aside, Julius has been incredible in the games Ant hasn't played in.
Julius had maybe his worst game of the season, certainly his most impactfully bad game of the season, I think.
Prior to last night, he was averaging like 27, 8, and 6 on 60% shooting from 2 at 36% shooting.
In other words,
without
doing all along.
but even better,
Right.
even more productive, even more efficient in those games. Now, the rub between why those games were as good as they were is none of those teams until Memphis in the non-Ant games really had a matchup for Julius. Now, that's not I'm just going to spin this as a positive thing. If Ant and Julius are both playing together, Julius should be in an advantage situation very, very frequently.
Yes.
And you should be able to be getting that production from Julius while Ant is out there as well. And it's not like Julius has played poorly when Ant has been out there, but it's down. It's down and it drops off like in direct correlation to what the usage is. And I don't think that has to be the case. I don't think it will be. I think that's going to be one of those things when I talk about the last 50 games of the season, where it does become a little more intuitive, maybe not to the degree that we're talking about in Bird and Magic and all of those sort of guys. I just think those two have to realize that's where the ceiling comes from, is in their own chemistry between the two of them within the context of the greater group,
Right.
of putting each other in more advantageous situations and allowing the one of them who is in the better spot at the given time to go a little bit more.
Right. They are both heliocentric players, and what needs to happen is that they expand, that it becomes less of a circle and more of a oblong, where they're moving without the ball, not to get the ball, but to create space for the other guy, or in pace and transition, for example. Both of them like to stand around when they don't have the ball. And see, that's the difference in all the other combinations you were talking about. Exactly.
Those players had actions to do in tandem with each other,
right.
that were huge. I mean, Murray and Jokic, right? Like, there's
absolutely,
they're individually,
that's actually a really good example.
They're individually awesome,
right?
But put together, I mean, what are the Nuggets running in clutch time over and over again? High pick and roll with Murray and Jokic. You know,
if only we had the greatest player in the world.
no,
but I know what you mean. No, you're right.
And Julius are great offensive players.
Right.
They are not greater than the sum of their parts.
Right.
I agree offense together. And that, I guess that's the curiosity I have, is, does that exist? I think that there can be some of that, but that's how when you talk about, I think this team can be a top 3 offense. I don't think I agree with that unless this Ant and Julius piece is coming together.
I think it can be a top 3 offense without maximum synergy between Julius and Ant, if you get Rudy, Dante, and Naz more involved. Because I do think when Ragu and Naz go off, it's like 12 points in 5 minutes, or 4 minutes. And those are big spurts. And this team needs to be keen on sensing that, because they are keen on it themselves. They have a sonar going like, all right, this is what I get to do right now. Dante takes some really stupid shots, but some of that is searching for
a boomlet.
Give me something to spark here. Usually it's much more successful when he does it with his defensive instincts, or he does it with something in transition to get going. Or I will tell you, if Julius looked for Ant the way he looks for Dante, that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because he looks for Dante a lot, and vice versa.
Well, and Dante does a better job of presenting himself.
Yeah,
that's the
chicken and the egg, obviously. There. Yeah, that's true.
So just to contextualize top 3 a little bit. Number 1 right now is Denver at 126 for offensive rating. New York's number 2 at 124. Houston's 3 at 123. Those are all really, really highly efficient.
3 very, very different offenses. What I would say is what Mike Brown has done in New York is exactly what we are talking about.
Okay.
Cat and Brunson and everybody else around them, they move the ball. Nobody is getting stiffed, but it is a more fluid, unpredictable. It's not as ISO heavy. It's not as it's your turn, it's my turn. It's a much better offense. And as much as some people can like Tibbs, and there's definitely things to like about Tibbs, that was a really smart move, because they are really thriving offensively around him. Houston is offensively efficient because they fucking kill you on the board. I mean, they get almost 50% of their misses.
They're still at 40% right now. I mean, that's nuts. Average 29% in the league.
It's just nuts. I mean, Amen Thompson is shooting terribly. I bet he's getting like 15 a game, because he's getting probably 7 a game off his own misses.
They're 3rd in offensive rating and have the 2nd worst turnover rate in the league.
And they can't shoot either.
Yeah. But they just get so many possessions.
So that's another way to do it. Obviously, this team does not have that.
The Wolves,
and then the Denver, obviously, it's the 2-man game we were talking about.
Yeah. The Wolves are, just to contextualize it, it said Denver 126, New York 124, Houston 123. The Wolves are having a good offensive season. They're 7th, but it's at 119. That's just that means they are closer to average than they are to Houston.
Right.
I just wanted to point out that top
agree.
3 is a high bar, which I think necessitates a lot of these things we're talking about, the inclusion of pace, ironing out the point guard position, Ant and Julius greater chemistry. Like all of those things I think are required to make up this gap. Now, to the Houston point, you don't have to be perfect to be a top 3
you just have
team.
to have an identity and a style.
Yeah.
And this team already has the identity of running the offense through Ant Julius. They just have to do it in a manner that facilitates everybody. And if you believe Finch's philosophy, which I do, he should be busy making that's why I said, when you said Julius and Ant need to get better with each other, that's a coach's thing. Yeah. And he needs to prove his bona fides there by
style. I like
making that better. Yeah.
I like the distinction between identity and style, because they do have an offensive identity. The style is inconclusive. Yeah, it's not.
I mean, it's not chopped liver. It's
no, I'm not saying that either.
And I do think, and this Finch talks about this all the time, but he doesn't really, wrap the knuckles with the ruler over it, which is feed Rudy when you get Rudy.
Yeah.
There's been more of that with Ant out.
Yep.
Rudy has had some fun.
Yeah.
Down by the rim. And it's because that presence of, a superstar, it's always easier to get the ball back to the superstar. It's never a dumb thing to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can be more efficient to not do that. And that is where the Wolves have to figure things out.
Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company, and we know there is a chunk of you out there who are trying to get a home improvement project done this winter, and we would love it if you made Your Home Improvement Company your answer for that project. Right now, they are offering buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free deal on triple pane windows that come with a lifetime warranty and are installed by certified professionals. Your Home Improvement Company also specializes in transforming outdated bathrooms, and they're offering 30% off on bathroom remodels this month. The bathroom renovations are also done by certified local professionals and backed with a lifetime warranty. But those aren't the only projects you can get done by them. Any home improvement project that you have, Your Home Improvement Company can help you with that. And they offer great financing deals as well that require 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2027. If you've had something you've been thinking about and you're going to need to outsource it to someone, we would love it if you at least contacted Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Let's do a little bit of Rudy for the last thing.
Sure.
You brought him up.
He was amazing. I mean, when I replayed that game, he was pretty good 1 to 4 quarters. One guy who played well all game.
And that's been a trend of the last couple of weeks that, to be fair, did start before Ant was out. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
It is not tied to Ant not being out there that Rudy can be more impactful. And I'm talking about offense. The defense is kind of a given. Not elite all the time. He definitely has pockets of time where it's
he's
not
always going to be inconsistent because he is not a typically talented player.
Right. Do you know that he has his best field goal percentage of his career this season?
He leads the NBA. I knew that. It was like 774 or something.
Yeah, 74.6 what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Right here.
Okay.
77% at the rim. I have talked about this before. I just think we're starting to figure out that 8-foot range. That range that isn't just a lob dunk sort of deal. I think
better, right.
To his credit, he's figuring out what to do in that middle spot. He's improved as a passer. He's not posting up anymore.
When he brought up the push shot, though, he said, "I do like that push shot."
He did.
And I was just thinking to myself, no, please.
No, it doesn't.
Don't like the push shot.
And I mean, we're kind of joking about the push shot, but that was that 2-3 years ago that I was talking about.
Right, it goes in a little more now.
I don't think I'm off of that.
Yeah, well, and he should be too.
Yeah,
but he likes the idea.
he doesn't have the skill to be able to like control his body and be able to take it. He takes him with his feet planted, whereas like you watch Hartenstein take that shot and Hartenstein is leaning towards the basket, his feet are moving
and it's
there.
the same move every time.
Yeah. So Rudy first year was the post up duck ins in that spot. That wasn't effective enough. There was a time where he's trying to go to the push shot a lot, and a lot of those looked awful.
Right.
And we're not going in at a high clip. And then he kind of started to put the ball on the floor and dribble and finish with finesse.
And there was also times when they were giving the ball by the nail or maybe just inside the foul line for a while to experiment with that. That did not work out well unless he's wide open. If he's wide open, then he can do those gigantic Euro steps and lurch his way to the basket.
But I think that's been the difference of the past couple of weeks. It's coming at a greater depth. So all he has to do is one dribble or even just reach to step through and dunk.
Exactly.
And the play is finished when he's doing that. And now that's like a competent thing to be able to do in that range. He's also becoming a competent passer in that range. And that matters.
He doesn't seem to be fumbling the ball as much.
No.
And that is where it all begins, of course.
Yes.
Because there's nothing more disheartening for a passer than to hit somebody for an easy layup and have it just bounce off his hands.
Right.
Or hit somebody for an easy layup and have them make a spectacle of it by, not finishing at all. So Rudy has begun to inspire more confidence in his teammates.
And they're giving him more they're more confident in him. And trust, as Rudy would say.
And Rudy is willing. One of the cool things about Rudy as a teammate, he is willing to go more than halfway on the idea of people getting him the ball. I think deep down inside himself, he knows I'm not the most reliable guy here. But I am big. I've been putting the ball through the hoop for a long time. And if you give it to me, the mistakes are loud, but the consistency is better than you think. But he is willing to understand why people are leery.
I think is a good example of that is obviously Finch has leaned harder into the Reid Randle pairing as the season has gone along and shelved Rudy at periods of time. Even if it's a game that Rudy was playing kind of well, Finch is just like, we need this other gear.
Especially offensively in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, has been fantastic.
And I think it's a good example of what you're talking about with Rudy because he hasn't once complained about it.
No.
To us.
Right.
And he'll complain. Like he's not he'll let it be known when we've done enough interviews with him to let it be known of when he thinks something is not working effectively. And he's been cool. He's been cool with or understanding to your term.
Maybe it's the Olympics. He's been embarrassed. I mean, that's too strong a word. He has been dramatically downgraded in terms of the rotation in the last couple of Olympics. And he's had to eat that. And that's, European country, you play for country, and it's bigger, I think, over there for basketball than it is here.
For sure.
And so I think having had to suck that up, he probably has gotten better at understanding it.
I'm just kind of surprised and a little impressed that he has sucked it up. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Rudy, he's such a singular basketball player.
Totally.
It's so fascinating to cover him because this team will miss him when he's gone for so many reasons. I mean, the games Rudy doesn't play, you suddenly realize how many screens aren't happening.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. And screens in basketball are the drudgery of the sport. You get hit all the time, and it is a selfless effort you do for your teammates. And he's been doing it for so long that, people just say, okay, well, Rudy's great on the screens, or,
Right.
But I mean, it's such a benefit to be able, if you play on the playground and you have a defender who's hounding you and all of a sudden he isn't there over and over again, his value He's an easy guy to criticize for a lot of reasons, but and he is somebody that makes piecing together a championship team more difficult because
Totally.
there are gaps in what he does that need to be compensated for by the other four players. So, I mean, I don't want to lionize the guy in terms of saying how fantastic he is. There are definitely weaknesses too.
No, we're talking about it within the context of Rudy's a really funky offensive player.
Yeah.
And we're trying to find things that don't
And
blow it up.
lately has been much less funky.
Yeah. And we can't skip offensive rebounding too.
Right.
With that, that's been the biggest thing. His highest offensive rebounding rate since the 2016-17 season when he was 24 years old.
Wow.
Like, I mean, the number, like if
That's
you
great.
look at and it's the
Right.
nerdy numbers and stuff like that, but the idea that Rudy is, I think like people were saying a little bit like Mike and Rudy are getting older. Rudy is obviously getting older, but he is not, you can't put him in the 38-year-old
No.
Mike Conley getting older group there, or Joe Ingles, who
Right.
were
No,
his
no.
teammates there
Absolutely.
at that time.
But I remember even as recently as 3 or 4 weeks ago, wondering
Yeah.
how long Rudy would be, whether or not you want to trade Rudy
Sure.
for that, he's going to have a player option, I guess next year, maybe.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. I mean, we're praising Rudy up and down. I'm not like ruling out the idea that a different type of center might be the best thing for this team.
Well, if Beringer is all that,
Yeah.
then, maybe not next year, but 2 years from now, put it this way. I don't think you ignore your point guard situation and draft a center unless you think that you're looking hard at the second timeline and not having the idea that Rudy Gobert is going to be a great 34 or 35-year-old center.
Yeah. I mean, and Beringer is the successor. I mean, that's
Obviously.
the
But
plan.
so is Rob.
Yeah, true. Yeah, which I think in time, not necessarily saying it's this season, but given that Rudy is still producing,
Right.
the uncomfortable conversation, if you're Tim Connolly in the front office, is, well, could we trade him before this deal is up at some point,
Right.
for another center who gives you
that is clearly
different things?
That is clearly an avenue for this team to transition into the second timeline without falling down.
Yeah, it's got to be on the board
Right.
as like
Right.
as
Right.
an option there. And I'm saying that Rudy is remaining a commodity in the market,
Right.
given what his production has been and what his film has looked like this season.
And all the bullshit over Rudy seems to have finally quieted down. There was a period of time where you wouldn't want to acquire Rudy Gobert because of the fan base.
Mm.
They would say, what are you getting this stiff for?
Yeah.
He got a lot of unfair, terrible press for
Right.
a while. Because blowhards like, Draymond Green and Shaq don't like him.
Right. Right.
So I find it interesting that Finch has already said a lot more nice things about Beringer than he said about Dillingham.
Yeah.
He's clearly more on board with that pick as a future, the guy is going to come through for us. And it's not that he's just Finch is an honest guy. I mean, I just know that he lets you know what he thinks. And he doesn't think that Dillingham is a bust, but he's in prove-it mode with Dillingham.
Mhm.
And I think that Beringer is probably getting more of that confidence, enthusiasm that we were saying that Dillingham needs than with Beringer than Dillingham's getting.
Yeah, and it was interesting last night when I asked him about Beringer, and he was like, well, we had to send him down there because you can't have your 19-year-old not playing. He's got to play. And I was asking about Beringer, so I get that that's what Finch was talking about, but I couldn't not let my mind go to Rob Dillingham and be like, well, your 20-year-old isn't really playing.
That
either.
is
But to your point, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just
but
yeah.
What I think is really fascinating about that is, do they think that would wound Dillingham more than help it? See, Dillingham may be the kind of guy, what the fuck am I doing in Iowa?
Sure.
Berenger knows why he's in Iowa.
Yeah.
You know, so
Do you think he knows where Iowa is geographically?
he does now. Good luck.
Yeah. No, I didn't. Just to clarify, I didn't mean that of like I think Dillingham should go down and be playing in the G League. I just thought it was an interesting juxtaposition of he's like, we need to have our 19-year-old be playing, and then also the day before he said, what if the role is only 10 minutes a night for Rob Dillingham? You know, or is he even going to be in the rotation?
I would argue that at some point in time, you're going to need to clean Dillingham's brain out. And one of the ways to do that might be to send him to Iowa and watch him get 40, 10, and 5.
Yeah.
Or 5 and 10, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But be like this dominant presence down there. Just to get him back on a track that, you know, I mean, there would be no shame in a 20-year-old guy going down to Iowa just to get the minutes and the reps.
Yeah. And especially if once this team is back at full strength, if Rob is out of the rotation, which was the case before Edwards and Conley got hurt.
Right.
Dillingham was out of the rotation. It was only one game.
If Bones is going to be, you know, with Conley, if you've got Dante, Bones, and Conley kind of splitting that mostly one role, there's not a lot of room there.
Yeah. And to that end, then Rob probably does need to play and clears right out or all of those sort of things. So I don't know. We'll see there. We'll see when Conley's back. We'll see when Edwards is back. And I mean, he's getting the opportunity when the opportunity is there due to injuries happening. Rob hasn't done a ton with it, but yeah, the situation sucks. It sucks. The Dillingham situation, because there's just not been enough to even really have a proof of concept.
Well, like I said, last night was the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
Because Finch could say to himself, I gave him a second stint, and if he had played well in that, he would have gone like the full 6 to 8 minutes or whatever. But, you know, 2.5 minutes and minus 13 later.
Yeah, man.
You know?
Yeah. No, it's a bad situation. And this is the point being is like, this is the plan right now. Like Finch laid his line in the sand. That's what it's going to be. And Rob will have to jump on an opportunity if and when it comes at all the rest of the way. But it does seem the assumption to be that Bones Highland is going to be in that role when they're back, when this group is back at full strength. Anything else? We're well over an hour here.
I'm good.
Call it a day. Always good to chop it up with you. And I don't know if we'll be able to make it happen next week just with the holiday.
Yeah. Either way, are you going to Denver? Christmas?
No, just because family coming to town.
And what's happening after Denver? Is there a little gap?
There's a game in Chicago. I think there's one between Denver and Chicago, though. Denver on Christmas Day, Brooklyn at home on the 27th, then Chicago on the 29th, and Atlanta on New Year's Eve.
So you're probably going to Chicago, I would guess, right?
I think so.
So we probably won't. I would say you'll probably be talking to somebody down there.
Yeah,
there's some other beat writers who go, I'm not going to Chicago. So
yeah, well,
we'll figure it out. If it isn't, you know, we've whatever happens.
Yeah, no, it's more of a Christmas thing, and I'm gonna just take a couple days off.
Good. Well, that's well deserved. So yeah, by all means.
Yeah,
I take off more days than you. I can tell you that much.
I'm a little bit younger than you. Yeah, no, I guess coming up next for listeners is Kyle and I are going to do. We don't normally do shows on Saturdays or on the weekends, but we are going to do one on Saturday. So as to be able to touch on this really big Thunder game. So that'll be next up in the feed, and it'll come out. It's just a really late game on Friday night. So the only real reasonable way that we can get to it is on Saturday afternoon. So certainly by Saturday evening. You got one more thing?
Yeah, I just remembered. My next call.
Thanks for raising your hand.
Well, I don't think the camera caught me, did it? My next column is going to be a mailbag. I haven't done one this year.
Okay.
And so this is as good a place as any for people who don't follow me on either Twitter or Blue Sky. I don't know how you get it to me otherwise, but anyway, Britt Robson at Twitter, and I think Imagine the same thing at Blue Sky.
Yeah. I like when you do those articles.
Yeah. Well, and I haven't done one in a long time, and I just need something that'll carry over to.
Sure.
I wanted to do it on the Wolves medical staff, and what I was told was that they're so far ahead of the curve that it's proprietary information they don't want to divulge.
Really?
Which I thought was pretty interesting. His podcast listeners get the first. That was what I was told, because they before Ant and Conley went down, they had 3 starting lineups and 17 total player minutes and everything, and so I thought
you can't even write a story about them.
Well, I mean, I think the kind of story I want to write is, why are you doing so much better than anybody else? They have reasons apparently, but they don't want to tell you what they are.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fair.
So anyway, so this
questions.
way will give me answering a bunch of questions is a great way to handle, like Minpo shuts down from like Christmas Eve to after New Year's. So it's a good way to placeholder it.
Yeah. So send those.
Send them to Britt Robson. Anyway, look me up on Twitter or Blue Sky.
Yeah.
And if for some reason you don't, you can email me at BROBSON34 at earthlink.net.
Earthlink.
Yeah.
I was like, when I get my
Earthlink
emails. No, send those over to Britt. It's it's a good way to get, I'm sure plenty of the time when we do when we do an episode, I get plenty of messages like, why didn't you talk about this? Here's your opportunity. Britt will talk about this, whatever that.
Actually, if there's feedback on, do you have feedback on any of the places you publish? Is Spotify or YouTube have comments?
Yeah, you're not going to want to take a look over there, though.
Oh, really?
Not a happy place.
It's
like
if you're not pissing people off, you're really not doing it right. Seriously, I mean, if everybody loves you, something's off.
Oh yeah. No, and I should say we get plenty, and you do too, plenty of positive feedback and people that really appreciate that, and the consistency that we do episodes. We probably do 50, 60 episodes a year, and I do. I'm exaggerating a little
hate
bit.
Mail is fine with me.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, for the purposes of this mailbag, I'm interested in questions, and I'm judge, jury, and executioner.
How about this? If you want to put in to talking to listeners right now, if you want to ask Britt questions, put them in the comments. It'll be easy for me. I'll just copy paste a handful of them, and I'll send it to Earthlink over there, and you'll have them all. Again, appreciate you coming in and doing this. And for all of you, I will talk to you on Saturday after the Wolves must-win game against the Oklahoma City Thunder on Friday.
Naz Reid.
But until then, with Kyle, he's Britt, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.